Most people love nothing more than consistency. This perspective has worked quite with 40 cards to, we all know, nothing is more constant than change. And the speed of this change is now extremely visible. Welcome to the third EXW online convention. My name is Jochen Wagner, EXW CSO Europe. I'm studied finance at the Faculty of Economics in Schmalkalden at the Trainforce Academy campus in Munich, and worked for a private equity fund several years. This I checked exactly such startup companies like EXW in a team of 7 people and a made investment decision. Of course, I am particularly pleased to present you another important building block in the history of EX today, EXW professionals. In this very detailed webinar, I not only want to give you an insight into the extensive project of EXW, but we also take a look at why it's so important that we go exactly this way with EXW. And we have there been blatantly large gaps in the room from a number of investors, financial advisors, and ordinary investors over the past decades. It is said that in the end, every crisis is the beginning of a new, better future. At the 1.5 hours intensive knowledge about economic connections of the global world economy and EXW. And what we all experiencing at EXW right now is the transformation from a caterpillar to a butterfly. But how is perceived by many right now? Now, the caterpillar is not nice to look at. In addition, she's only eating, and you have the feeling that nothing changed. At some point, it doesn't move at all, just before the metamorphosis. When the butterfly is there, it is perceived as a wonder of nature. What I want to say with this, work and perceptions in relation to the startup company is the most important phase in the growth process of a company for investors and participants alike, comparable to the caterpillar stage. This knowledge makes you a real professional. You decide on the path of network marketing right from the start, but why? Very simple. In the future, it will no longer be the Zuckerbergs, Gates, or Buffetts that will make a decisive contribution on the growth of entire industries worldwide, but high-quality communities and networks. Self-determination about future economics decision is getting bigger. And that is why everyone should aspire to develop further. Strong communities will give direction in the new economy. Another reason why EXW Professional will become a very important building block for all of us in the future. And what do we learn from this extremely important information? Well, we learn to listen to the markets and understand what the market needs. This is not only the Z factor when it comes to economic growth, but also when it comes to our own personal growth. Europe has a very weak startup culture for decades. Why is it? Who of you knows the saying from banks, the bank at your side, or we clear the way? What do such slogans convey to us? Dependency. Dependence and fear of change. With this basic attitude, however, we do not get any further today. We will create something that changes the world, or we want to become #1 in the field of digital financial services worldwide. If you do not at least have these so-called elevator pitches in our business plan, you will no longer be noticed by investors. The venture capital sense in Europe has been so marginalized that you can be really proud to be able to make decisions socially acceptable again with a company like EXW. for me personally, this was a crucial factor to pay EXW my full attention and invest all my energy in this project. Now, back to the roots is also that when we take a closer look at the reasons for impending currency reset. Ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, we will experience this in the coming years, maybe even months. The reason for this are, of course, on the one hand, an even increasing amount of printed money, but on the other hand, it does not meet the corresponding demand. Yes, and the current crisis is likely to accelerate this process considerably. Our entire monetary systems has always been exposed to external attacks. It was manipulated, misused, and very often you had to make massive cuts in the availability and intrinsic value. The specter of peoples with regard to their real was and still is inflation. But what create inflationary developments at all and why is inflation primarily so bad for us peoples and not for banks and governments? The bigger factor in this regards is due to facts that people have physical assets and debts. If a currency reset is now carried out due to excessive inflation, there is also a new valuation of assets and debts. So in the end, it's the people who spoon out the soup that the banks and governments have brought in for you. The joke is, on the other hand, is that government that reflects central banks' assets. This symbiosis and the exchange of bond purchase and sales have the consequence that the ECB has no legal basis to regulate government's debt in a currency reform, and neither does it. That is exactly the point of a currency reform, and sometimes the reason why the governments and the banks are not so enthusiastic about digital currencies and prefer to sell us their products such as insurance, saving books, and poorly management funds. Well, okay, some of these assets also have a reason to exist, yes? And that's why we will take a look at the range of investments instruments that exists. The investment strategy when it comes to building up an asset is of course a very important part of asset allocation. How should I split my assets into short, medium, and long term? But also based on my willingness to take this risk in the granted fixed income or speculative and opportunity investments, and redo a place EXW in this universe. The experts among you probably already know the answer to these questions a long time ago, but many still don't. For example, when we talk about fixed income papers, saving books, real estate, raw materials, bonds, and stocks. For example, you place Bitcoin here? Incidentally, this question is also frequently discussed by experts. To the answer to it is just logical as it's applicability. However, it is also very important that every situation is ultimately individual and that we can therefore only address certain basic principles. The way everyone approaches the matter is ultimately up to everyone. In this context, decisions-making principles and understanding lead us to the next topic, and let's take a look at what are difference between profit and return and how and in what level these factors arise in a company. The topic is so important because there are still the biggest misunderstandings in the external image. The reasons for this are varied as there are understandable in order to give the good feeling that they need to be able to make a decision in this connection. We only have to be able to distinguish between returns and profits in the company. Everything is based on a single logic, namely the logic of the maximizing profits. And that is precisely the magic of capital growth. We have to position yourselves, your profits are made when we want to have above average growth opportunities. If we only look for return too much as we are used to, we lose the influence on our real opportunities because the mass of people concentrates precisely on it. This is also a product of the conditioning of the masses for decades, for the benefit of the large corporation and financial lobbyists. I come from a world in which exactly this profit maximization was thrown it up for a long time. Even leader politicians describe it was dubious. However, if this industry did not exist today, we would be almost 13 years back in economic and technology development and would probably still be using rhetoric dial phones. But one of my favorite topics will be education. Looking back a half years, this actually confirms the questionable state of our current education systems. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that at the start of the Corona crisis, most educational institutions had no plan for how they could replace the present tense phase with online lessons in a sound and seamless manner. The word homeschooling initially made me feel so uncomfortable because I know how backward our schools are in this area. I have two girls myself, aged 7 and 16 years old. And at the first, I thought, well, we are not the only one affected by it. It will go on someone. In my example, my elders, the teachers took a whopping 1.5 months to be able to offer a platform on which the students could exchange ideas with their teachers. But it wasn't a lesson. The teaching materials was sent by mail or post. And the only thing that interested the teachers in the weekly meetings was how many students work on the assignments and how much did not do so. Assistance on difficult topics, nothing. Why our education system has hardly changed in the past 115 years, and what its actual purpose is a very important issue to understand how we have to position yourselves in the future so that we can produce more visionaries instead of willis taxpayers. And there we are in the middle of the EXW ecosystems. Of course, we will go into more details on each and every point, and hopefully we will be recognizing how all these individual building blocks in the primary ecosystem, as well in the secondary area, as well as in the secondary ecosystems, have a perfectly coordinated symbiosis, the peak between the needs and the profit exceptions of these individual components for the entire company EXW. Finally, it's again about important tax and legal aspects. It should be said that, of course, we first look at the German guidelines, and then, of course, also country specific to all other countries. And of course, we take a short look into the future and introduce yourself the questions of what exactly are the future challenges for financial services. Yes, and that's about it. I hope you could follow me and see it's similarly to meet that with a certain degree of more professionalism, we can decisively shape the standard in the network marketing industries. Thank you very much, and I hope you see me next week in this webinar. I'm very happy, and now I give back to Andre. Ciao.